Alright guys, welcome back, and today we're checking out another SCP video, and today it's going to be Sarkicism, magic in the SCP universe. Magic. Finally getting around to some magic, so let's figure out what this is all about. There's some weird stuff in this SCP universe, so when you're talking about magic, it's probably going to get ridiculous. So let's go ahead and jump into it.
The nature of belief and faith is certainly a powerful one, regardless of the concept of a deity or deities. But even just looking at the power, control, and influence that believers can possess. From the widespread influence of the Vatican to the utter control of a small cult leader, faith has been a prominent aspect of our species for thousands of years. We've already looked at one religion in the SCP universe, the Church of the Broken God, but now we'll discuss their counterpart, the Sarkic Cults. Sarkicism is another very large topic within the SCP universe, and this would be a very long video if I tried to cover it all. So let's just try and get a good idea of what Sarkicism is, and why it has its followers.
Alright, well, I mean, it's magic, so it's a pretty good reason to have followers. I mean, if someone rocked up to me and said, hey, I know magic, and they could prove it, I'd be a pretty quick convert.
Sark means flesh in ancient Greek, which summarizes the overall belief system of the Sarkites, which is diametrically opposed to the Church of the Broken God's theology based on technology. In fact, most Sarkites don't actually refer to themselves using the term Sarkic, as the term was an insult created by the Church of the Broken God's predecessors.
Oh, okay.
That is not to overemphasize the Sarkites' opinion of the Church, as it is believed that while the Church views the Sarkites as a sort of biblical foe, the Sarkites seem to view the Church as simply another obstacle. The Sarkic cults are generally divided into two different factions that operate in vastly different ways, but follow mostly the same set of beliefs.
You know, it seems like Yaldabaoth was less concerned with Mechane, and he kind of just wanted to do his own thing and mold the humans in his own image, I guess, while Mechane actively went out of his way to stop Yaldabaoth and cage him up using his own body. So the god of the flesh simply just wants to get out of the cage and get back to his, his job of influencing humans and biological life, while Mechane took it upon himself to intentionally stand in the way of Yaldabaoth.
The proto-Sarkic cults are those found in small, isolated communities across Europe and Asia. These communities are usually poor, superstitious, technophobic, and generally hostile to any outsiders.
Makes sense.
The neo-Sarkic cults, on the other hand, are found in much more urban environments and can be difficult to differentiate from other wealthy city dwellers. They are usually upper class, coming from affluent families, and with no apparent objections to technology and modern life.
Okay.
Both cults, however, believe that one of the main concepts of Sarkicism is that one can achieve apotheosis, that is, becoming a god. It's generally accepted that Grand Karcist Eon, the founder and prophet of the Sarkic cults, did become a god through some sort of interaction with the primordial goddess, Yaldabaoth. Proto-Sarkites believe that in time, Eon will eventually provide them with godhood, and Neo-Sarkites believe that it must be obtained through willpower, and they must one day usurp Eon. This will-to-power concept is prevalent in Neo-Sarkites, and a common proverb says to do as you will to whom you will, as desire is the measure of all things.
Well, that's a dangerous philosophy.
Both cults believe in the idea of sacrifice, but here they differ greatly, as Proto-Sarkites believe in the sacrifice of oneself for the benefit of the many, and Neo-Sarkites instead believe in the sacrifice of the many for the benefit of oneself.
Ooh. Man, alright, so just within the, the Sarkic belief, if you will, there's already like different denominations, and there's some pretty big differences between the two. It seems like the proto Sarkics are, you know, almost more like, you know, they said they view more of self-sacrifice for the greater good of their community, almost like, you know, like a hive, like insects are willing to sacrifice themselves if it's in the best interest of the hive, right? While the Neo-Sarkics are the exact opposite, and they're willing to presumably sacrifice many people in order to achieve this apotheosis. I mean, whew, that could lead to some really horrific stuff.
Either way, belief in cycles of destruction and regeneration is paramount to the Sarkic faith.
I can't believe they used this photo. This photo is brutal. If I recall correctly, this is like an old Russian family from way back when, and they're actually selling the corpses of their children who died to make money and buy food, because yeah, if I recall correctly, that's what this image is. It's two parents selling the corpses of their children during very hard times, and that's just brutal.
Both cults often practice ritual cannibalism, human sacrifice, the worship and spread of contagions, and bodily augmentation. Grand Karcist Eon founded the Sarkic Cults nearly 4,000 years ago, somewhere in western Siberia. The Sarkic timeline is muddy, even their recent history, but it's believed that Eon was born to a Davite mother and a slave father, as the Davites referred to him as a half-breed. Eon was a slave for much of his youth in the city-state of Adatum, possibly serving under an alchemist or priestess, until he led a slave revolt against the Davites. During this time, Eon demonstrated great power over organic flesh, both his own and others. Examples of this include transforming his hand into some sort of wolf jaw, capable of ripping through a metal jail cell.
Wow, okay.
Forcing others to act against their will, such as causing men to throw themselves on their spears, and could also gift these powers and other physical augmentations onto his followers. During this revolt, Eon was aided by 4 disciples, known as the Clavigar in the Sarkic faith, who would go on to be essentially saints. It's unclear how exactly Eon gained his abilities, but it somehow involves Yaldabaoth, a god or goddess believed by the Sarkites to be responsible for creating the universe, possibly through the process of giving birth to other gods, and then devouring them and exhaling the remains. Neo-Sarkites revere this god, but Proto-Sarkites seem to regard it as the enemy of all living things. Yaldabaoth is also joined by 6 other entities, known as Archons.
Those are some... The Proto-Sarkites and the Neo-Sarkites have some major philosophical differences, and I'm a little surprised they're actually not, like, at war with each other over these things. Like, I don't know, maybe they are, maybe they'll get into it, but sub-factions of the same group, but man, their ideologies differ pretty harshly.
Which are described as manifestations of primordial chaos. It's said that Eon endured 6 trials given by the Archons, which allowed him to break free from the bondage of mortal limitations. In one text, Eon claims to have murdered Death herself and read the entrails of the Creator. Regardless of how Eon managed to become godlike, his slave revolt conquered the Davites, forcing them to recede, and the Sarkites built a number of cities, largely composed of organic material. The Sarkic civilization
built cities largely composed of organic material. I wonder if they were just using their magic to, you know, conjure this flesh to build things out of, or I wonder if they were using what was it, SCP-610, the flesh that hates? I wonder if they're using that to build stuff. I don't know.
Against its golden age and spread across Eurasia, with their capital being the converted kingdom of Adatum. Their civilization eventually spread into the Mediterranean, establishing a foothold here and colonizing the various islands. It was here where they would encounter the real resistance, however, as the Mechanites, the precursors to the Church of the Broken God, would rise up against them alongside other civilizations. This massive war involved anomalous technology, huge colossi, monstrous abominations, and 20 to 30 million casualties. The war ended with really no winners, as the Sarkic Empire broke apart and went into hiding, leading to a division in culture and theology. The Mechanites dwindled and eventually became the Church of the Broken God, and the devastation led to the collapse of the Bronze Age. Sarkicism would continue to live on in small communities throughout Eurasia, and their belief systems would slowly differ. At this point, it's completely unknown what happened to Grand Karcist Eon, and the Foundation is currently not even sure if he ever existed at all. Eventually, certain Sarkites would become intertwined with some noble courts, acting as advisors or court magicians, teaching the lords and ladies about alchemy, astrology, and the occult, while spreading belief in...
I wonder if, since a lot of this stuff happened in, like, Siberia and Russia and that general area, and it seems like some of these Sarkics are embedding themselves as, you know, like mystics or wise men to, like, royal family. I wonder if Rasputin in the SCP world was a member of the Sarkic cults.
Sarkicism. These courts would become Sarkic great houses, practitioners of Neo-Sarkicism that follow their own interpretation of the religion. Both Proto-Sarkites and Neo-Sarkites would maintain their numbers through generations of inbreeding, avoiding genetic defects through Sarkic rituals. And Sarkites have shown vastly lower mortality rates compared to normal populations. Both groups also adhere to a strong belief in secrecy.
That's interesting. They might be able to use their Sarkic rituals to prevent or cure diseases to try and, you know, extend their longevity. That's pretty interesting.
Mistrust or necessity, and so Sarkicism is largely unknown to the wide world. So, most Sarkites present a dangerous threat to the current world order, as the Foundation considers their speculated goals to be fairly apocalyptic in nature, although not all Sarkites are dangerous, such as SCP-2815, a village of inbreds that give out human flesh disguised as fruit that for some reason is safe to eat. They also donate organs and blood grown from a tree to local hospitals.
That's a pretty interesting little tidbit of information there, that there's a group of Sarkics who seem to be altruistic, that seem to help their community by providing food and apparently organs. If they're good, regular functioning organs, I mean, why not? And they're not, you know, they're not sacrificing anybody, I don't think. They're not sacrificing anybody in order to have this tree grow and produce these organs. Given the juxtaposition with the rest of the Sarkic cults, it seems like these guys are somewhat altruistic while the other ones are very, very dangerous. That's kind of interesting that there is enough variation within the cults themselves that, you know, you've got one cult that wants to take over the world and turn it to flesh, and then you've got another part of the same religion, if you will, that is very altruistic and seems to use their magic for the benefit of society. That's pretty interesting.
Sadly, however, these benign examples are few and far between, and we're left mostly with highly anomalous and dangerous entities. I would be doing many of these SCPs a disservice by only quickly summarizing them here instead of giving them their own videos, but I'll provide a few examples. SCP-2480 is one of the more notable ones, a dimensional anomaly located in a town in Massachusetts. The anomaly is causing Sarkite monstrosities to bleed into our reality, either from another dimension or another timeline. The GOC and the Foundation are currently working together to contain the situation, but this is connected with another SCP located in Romania, SCP-2191. Here, a massive entity spread across hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of tunnels, believed to be a concubine of Grand Karcist Eon. This entity is fed liquefied human remains, provided to it by a species of mutated vampiric humans. It's also appeased by locals who provide human sacrifices to minimize seismic activity.
This particular example he's giving seems to share a lot of similarities with the Flesh That Hates entry, where they have the underground tunnels, the churches. It seems like they have pools made out of biological material used to feed these creatures or create them. It seems to be a little bit of a crossover, maybe.
SCP-2133 is a proto-Sarkic commune in Russia, whose inhabitants are reincarnated whenever they die, possessing all of their past memories and appearance.
Oh, wow.
They deposit their turnip harvests and any gangrenous limbs or tumorous growths in the church every evening, and the village is also filled with dark red tentacles that attack any outsiders entering the church.
Oof.
Beneath the church is an expansive series of tunnels and caverns, where there seems to be thousands of entities growing in eggs, as well as a temple devoted to a Karcist.
Again, underground tunnels, a church in there, lots of biological stuff going on down there. It seems to be a pattern here, even amongst the different cults or groups or sects of this religion. So
there is possibly a strong connection between SCP-2133 and SCP-610, the Flesh That Hates.
Yeah.
I've already made a video covering 610.
There's a lot of similarity between what's happening here,
which Sarkites refer to as the Red Death, and it's believed that this is the Sarkites' ultimate weapon in reshaping the world. Massive Sarkic organisms containing human DNA are believed to have battled the captured Colossus, SCP-2406.
Wow, that thing's wild looking. There's multiple humanoid figures here that seem to be mashed together to create some kind of flesh beast. That's pretty wild.
During the war between the Sarkites and the Mechanites. Another large organism was used as a Sarkic temple in their Golden Age, SCP-2095, but eventually was conquered during the war and died. SCP-2075 is a Karcist that was captured by the Foundation, but easily broke containment when it revealed that they had only captured one small aspect of itself, along with two of the security personnel assigned to the SCP.
Interesting.
The doctor in charge was stabbed with an anomalous dagger, which seemed to transform him into a large amorphous mass of flesh and bone, which proceeded to kill 56 personnel before dying.
Damn! Man, they got some wild stuff. A dagger that you can get stabbed by and it turns you into a flesh monster? Okay, that's crazy.
Finally, there is SCP-2510, an important anomaly related to both the Church of the Broken God and the Sarkic Cults.
Okay, alright.
2510 is a larger machine, and part of it has been made into a trans-dimensional gateway. The first people reported to have gone through the gateway, in 1940, were said to have found a machine city.
Ooh.
The gateway destination can be controlled, and the Foundation sent a team to multiple dimensions, all variations of Earth. There's too much here to really go into detail, but to summarize, these dimensions were each one where the war between the Sarkic cults and the rest of humanity came to a climax. In one of them, parts of the broken god were fashioned into an unimaginable weapon that wiped out every trace of life from the planet. In others, the Sarkic forces went out, and Yaldabaoth broke free from its cage, driving the world to a horrific apocalypse. In another reality, however, humanity banded together and achieved a technological singularity, uniting to defeat the Sarkites. The lesson to be learned from this anomaly is that if humanity doesn't work together and embrace the Church of the Broken Gods ideology, the Sarkic cults will win.
Alright, there's a couple interesting things here with that. One, you've got this transdimensional gateway. And not only is it a gateway to another reality, but apparently it's a gateway to multiple realities, and the gateway can be controlled or, programmed or whatever have you. And then second, you've got the different realities that they've visited where, they basically have tests that have been performed in other realities showing, the outcome or potential outcome of the war between the Sarkics and the Church of the Broken God. It'd be interesting to see if they use that information. Given this information, if I was a member of the O5 Council, I would be fully backing the Church of the Broken God to attempt to save humanity and civilization, because it seems like in the examples where the Sarkic cults win, everybody either dies or becomes a horrific mutated monster. And in the two instances where apparently the Church of the Broken God is successful, yes, one of them is, for all intents and purposes, an apocalypse where all biological life has been wiped out. However, I think that was probably a last-ditch effort. Like, the Sarkics were probably winning, kind of like the Flood in Halo, right? Where the Forerunners were like, listen, we tried, but this infection, this disease is spreading too fast, too broad. We can't stop it. We need to activate the Halo rings and just wipe the slate clean. Otherwise, there's no hope for the future. So I think that's probably a similar scenario that the Church of the Broken God members ran into in that alternate reality. Then, of course, there's the final reality that we've been told of, which is everybody bands together, accepts the teachings of the Church of the Broken God, and successfully wipes out the Sarkic cults and creates a technologically advanced society where, presumably, if they've reached the technological singularity, then, they have advanced robotics, AI, super advanced technology. This is probably a utopian city at that point.
Since there's really no canon, however, this is just one perspective. So, this should have provided a good jumping-off point to continue learning about Sarkicism as it's continually expanded. In the majority of cases, it's very easy to look at the Sarkic cults as nothing more than threats to humanity.
Seems that way.
That seems to be the general consensus for most of the community. While some might boil down the conflict between the Broken God Church and the Sarkites to just good versus evil, good fiction is rarely as simple as that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. Even if you side with the Church of the Broken God, there's probably some downsides to that as well. However, I think the downsides to the Sarkic cults being on top is much more severe.
Regardless, Sarkicism and its anomalies are a very interesting blend of religion, folklore, occultism, and body horror.
And to his flock, Ion thus spoke. I have stepped beyond the flow of dreams, stood before the old ones within their own desolate domain. I have endured their intolerable force across countless eons. I have seen the infinite dead worlds, murdered death herself. I have read the entrails of our Creator, beheld eternity unfurled. Know that our paradise draws near, and with our own flesh shall we birth it. Whew. that was a kind of a brief overview, it seems, of Sarkicism, the Sarkic Cults. A little bit less magic than I was thinking it would be. Clearly, they do have some kind of magic or rituals or whatever it is that they do to advance their own agenda. So I think we're going to get into a little bit more of the Sarkic SCPs just to kind of get a little bit better idea of what we're dealing with here. There seems to be a lot of crossover or a lot of similarities with the SCP-610, the Flesh That Hates. It seems like several of the Sarkic cults or villages or whatever seem to have some things in common. A lot of underground tunnels, underground churches, growing buildings or underground areas out of flesh. I think maybe one of the most interesting parts was learning that there is an altruistic side to some of these Sarkic groups. Yes, they are the minority when it comes to all of the groups involved here, but it does show you that there are some of them willing to do good things with this, this Sarkic magic, if you will. Having a tree that grows organs that is then donated to hospitals for organ transplants. That's pretty good. That's saving lives. On the flip side, most of the rest of the Sarkic cults are seemingly dangerous and are willing to sacrifice many people, if not everyone, in the hopes of freeing Yaldabaoth or achieving apotheosis. They definitely seem more dangerous than other groups of interest. They seem very hostile and their end goals seem very apocalyptic. So overall, though, very cool, very interesting. I hope you guys found the video interesting. If you did, leave a like, drop a subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below what other things we should be checking out. Are there any specific videos on maybe some Sarkic SCPs that have some cool information or something a little bit different? That'd be cool to learn about. Overall, guys, hey, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching the video. As always, guys, take care of yourselves and have a great day.